Hello. On behalf of the Illinois Department of Human Rights and the Lawyers Committee for Better Housing, we want to welcome you to our webinar, Your Right to Fair Housing, a Guide for New Americans. The purpose of this webinar is to inform all newly arrived residents of Illinois about their rights in housing according to federal and state laws. We hope you find this information useful. This information is for informational purposes only. Everything contained in this webinar is educational. Please consult with an attorney if you feel you need legal advice. This presentation covers basic information on fair housing, examples of discrimination, how to file a complaint, and other recommendations. Have you ever heard of the term fair housing? What does it mean? Fair housing is about choice. As a person living in the United States, you have a right to live wherever you choose and to enjoy your home with no discrimination. It does not matter what your immigration status is. Everyone has the same rights under fair housing law. Discrimination can be very obvious, but it can also be hidden. It is important to know what the law says about discrimination and how you can protect yourself and your family. To give you a bit of background, over time there have been many efforts made to eliminate housing discrimination and to promote residential integration. Initially, there was the Civil Rights Act of 1866, which guaranteed property rights to all U.S. citizens. It even prohibited discrimination based on race or color. Then in 1964, there was Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. This law emphasized that it prohibited discrimination in federally assisted programs such as the Veterans Administration and the Federal Fair Housing Administration. It wasn't until the Civil Rights Act of 1968 that this fight for equal housing gained much strength. This law described the types of discrimination that were made illegal under the law in more detail. It was illegal to discriminate in the sale or rental of most housing if the discrimination was based on race, color, national origin, religion, and sex. In 1973, there was the first civil rights legislation to protect the rights of persons with disabilities. This law was known as Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. In 1975, a law was then passed to include protection for persons based on age. According to this law, if you are over 40 years old, you cannot be discriminated against in housing. The Fair Housing Law was again changed in 1988 to expand the number of protected classes. It now included protections for persons with disabilities, mental or physical, familial status, meaning families with children under the age of 18, and pregnant mothers. The Fair Housing Law has been changed various times as of the 2000s. The law has been We've been able to include more protections for people, and we will review these in a few minutes. The term protected class is used to describe a category of characteristics which cannot be targeted for discrimination. Everyone is covered on a protected class one way or another. For example, most people identify to be of a specific race or ethnicity. Most people also identify to be of a specific sex, male or female, or of a specific religion. The Federal Fair Housing Law protects people living all over the United States, from big cities to small towns. Under the Federal Fair Housing Law, it is a violation to discriminate against someone because of the following protected classes. Race, which describes a social construct that refers to certain physical attributes associated with a person's geographical or cultural characteristic. The U.S. Census uses the following categories for race: American Indian, Alaskan Native, Asian, Black, African American, Native Hawaiian, or other Pacific Islander, white, or other. Hispanic and Latino are noted under ethnicity or ancestry. Color refers to people with different skin tones, even within the same racial group. National origin refers to the place where a person or their ancestors were born. Religion refers to aspects of religious observance, practice, and belief. Sex includes sexual harassment. It's the status of a person as a male or female. It also includes pregnancy-related allegations and cases dealing with sexual harassment. Disability refers to either physical or mental disability, whether that's an actual disability that someone has, or perceived disability, or a history of a condition related to a disability. Finally, familial status refers to families that have children living in their household who are under the age of 18. It also includes expecting mothers and persons who are seeking custody of a minor. The Illinois Human Rights Act is the state law. In Illinois, this law provides additional protections for people who have been discriminated against based on age, ancestry. This relates to people who are of Hispanic or European descent, etc. Marital status, your status as a person who is married, single, separated, divorced, or widowed. Unfavorable military discharge, which refers to RE3 military classification or dishonorable discharge. Military status, which refers to active duty, veteran, or member of the reserves. And recent amendments or changes to the law include protections for persons based on their sexual orientation, whether that's actual or perceived heterosexuality, homosexuality, bisexuality, or gender-related identity, whether that's traditionally associated with a person's designated sex at birth. Another recent change to the law includes protections for people based on their order of protection status. If a person has been a victim of domestic violence and they have an order of protection that was issued to them, they cannot be discriminated against in housing. There are other municipalities that also have additional protections. It's important that you check with your local city to see if there are any other laws that you should be aware of. Federal fair housing laws and state fair housing laws protect people who live in a variety of housing. Some examples include houses and apartments, co-op apartments, condominiums, housing that's provided by an employer, migrant farm worker housing, summer homes, timeshares, nursing homes, homeless shelters, mobile homes, vacant lots that are going to be ready for residential use. And in Illinois, the law also covers commercial real estate transactions. So it doesn't matter in what type of housing you live in, it's most likely that you will be protected under fair housing law. Now that you're familiar with protected classes and the types of housing, we'll now explain some examples of discrimination that are most common. Discrimination in the advertisement of a unit is an example of obvious discrimination. It is illegal under the law to indicate a preference, limitation, or intent to deny someone housing because of their protected class. In this example, you see a sign that says "For rent." Underneath it says "No kids allowed, adults only." This would be discrimination based on familial status. If you are placing an advertisement in a newspaper or you're going to publish it somewhere, you have to make sure that you're following fair housing laws. If you are a person looking for housing and you come across one of these signs, please report discrimination when you see it. Another example of discrimination is misrepresenting the availability of property, saying that a unit is no longer available when it really is. So if you've ever heard the phrase, "Sorry, this house has been rented," but you still see a "for rent" sign, that could potentially be discrimination, meaning misrepresentation of an available property. This is also true for commercial properties. Sometimes people lie about the availability of a property because when they see someone at their door, they judge them based on their race, disability, and sometimes because they have children. Other examples of discrimination include refusing to rent or sell a property to someone because they think that that person was not born in the United States or because they know that that person is not a U.S. citizen. Another reason why people are discriminated against are because they do not speak English. Sometimes people make judgments or assumptions based on a person's ability to speak English. That would be discrimination based on national origin. Requiring proof of citizenship only to people whose last names sound like they are from a different country could also be considered discrimination. Conducting criminal or credit background checks because the landlord or property manager perceives the potential tenant to be an immigrant could also be considered discrimination. Landlords and real estate companies, property management companies, they all must apply the same rules to every potential renter or buyer. If a credit or criminal background check is required for screening, this must be done for all potential tenants or clients regardless of their national origin or immigration status. Another example of discrimination is called altering terms or conditions of a real estate transaction. That means that if someone is charged a higher security deposit or rent amount because of their protected class, this is an example of discrimination. We see this case a lot with people who have the need to use a guide dog for their disability or a support animal. We also see that sometimes landlords charge a higher security deposit for families with children. If they do not apply the same rules to everyone, they could be in violation of the law. Also, giving someone a different term or condition for receiving a mortgage loan, home loan, insurance, or other real estate-related transaction could also be considered discrimination under the law if this is based on someone's protected class. Finally, another example of discrimination is segregating families or other groups of people into different units or floors or buildings. For example, only allowing single males to live in a building and families in another building is considered segregation, and that's illegal under the Fair Housing Law. There are some important things to remember. 1. Fair housing laws protect all persons. 2. Immigration status is not required in order to report discrimination. 3. It is a violation of the law to deny someone housing because they may look like or sound like they are undocumented or immigrant. 4. A landlord is not required to ask about a person's immigration status. There is no law that requires a landlord to add this to their screening process. 5. Proof of citizenship or residency is not required in order to give someone access to housing. If you know these things, you'll be able to assert your rights and report discrimination when it happens. You may be asking yourself, why is it important that I report discrimination? Well, reporting discrimination is the first step to stopping it from occurring in your community. Many acts of discrimination can only be investigated if there is a brave person who will stand up and report them. You're protected under the law against intimidation or harassment if you report housing discrimination. Sometimes people suffer retaliation when they report something that is against the law. Well, the Illinois Human Rights Act protects people against retaliation as well. Neither HUD nor the Illinois Department of Human Rights inquire about immigration status when investigating claims of discrimination. Do not be afraid to speak out. If you or someone you know is concerned about being reported to ICE, please know that ICE has a policy in which they will protect the person who is pursuing a legitimate civil rights complaint. Filing a charge with the Illinois Department of Human Rights is considered to be a legitimate civil rights complaint. So what steps do you need to take to file a charge of discrimination? You may write or call IDHR to ask about your concern. There is no fee for asking questions, and there is no fee for this service. You may complete a complainant information sheet, which is the initial form that we need to collect that has all of your information and a summary of everything that has happened. This form must be submitted to the intake investigator at the Illinois Department of Human Rights. This intake investigator will review the documents and draft a copy for you to sign. You must make sure that everything is correct, and you must return the signed copy to the Illinois Department of Human Rights. I would like to mention that you have options if your housing rights have been violated. You can file with the Illinois Department of Human Rights, but you can also retain a private attorney and file in federal or circuit court. You may also bring a friend to help you go through the investigation process. They may not answer any questions or participate in the investigation process, but they may be there for your moral support. If we cannot help you with your situation, we may refer you to other government agencies or other nonprofit groups who can help with your issue. You must act quickly. If you feel you have been discriminated against, you must file a complaint within 1 year after the allegation of discrimination. To file with a government agency, the limitation is 1 year. However, if you file on your own with a private attorney in a state or federal court, you can have up to 2 years to file after the discrimination has occurred. Here is some helpful information to have. Documents, any documents related to the real estate transaction, signs, any pictures or copies of signs that you saw in a newspaper or posted somewhere regarding the housing that you saw, statements. If a landlord, property owner, or someone said something that was discriminatory and you wrote it down, that could be useful in the investigation process. Also, if you have evidence that you were treated unfairly and you have proof of that, that's also helpful information to have. If you had contacted an organization and they conducted a test to find out if discrimination happened, then that could also serve as evidence for your complaint. Witness testimony, if at the time that you went to see the housing, you brought a friend or family member and they were there and they witnessed the discrimination, they may also be useful with their testimony. The investigators at the Illinois Department of Human Rights do not decide who is telling the truth, but they do try to conduct a fair and neutral investigation to determine if fair housing violations occurred. We have some final recommendations for you that we think will be very helpful. Know the fair housing laws and other related laws in your communities. Being informed is the best tool you will have to succeed in this country. Have the courage to speak out against unfair actions. This may be difficult at times, but in the end, if you speak out against unfair actions, you are helping yourself, your family, and your community. Help others exercise their right to fair housing. Being knowledgeable and helping people get to the right resource is also important. Keep good records and documents. If you rent, you must save your lease, a copy of your lease, a copy of any payments that you have made. Make sure you keep these records and any other documents that you have related to your landlord or the purchase of a home. When you maintain these good records and documents, you will have proof of everything that has occurred, and that will be a good defense for you. Be patient. Sometimes during the process of investigation, it can take some time to gather all of the information. So we ask that you please be patient with the process, but know that in the end, if a fair housing violation occurred and we have proof of that, or if there is sufficient evidence, you will be able to win in the end. I'd like to thank you for your attention on behalf of the Illinois Department of Human Rights and the Lawyers Committee for Better Housing. We hope that this information was very helpful to you. Please call us if you have any questions. You may file a complaint or call our departments for information. For federal assistance under the Federal Fair Housing Act, you may contact the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Their office is located in Chicago. Their phone number is 312-353-5680. For the Illinois Department of Human Rights, whose main office is in Chicago, but also has an office in Springfield and Marion, Illinois, you may contact us via email at idhr.fairhousing@illinois.gov or call us for housing questions at 312-814-6229. Again, thank you very much. Please make sure you have this information that you can keep in case you or a friend may need it. Thank you.